Okay. Well, thank you for coming today. It's great to see you guys.
Thanks for inviting
Or
us.
ladies, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to misgender you.
I use guys all the time.
Right.
We know we're girls.
Yes. That's how you present for sure. So you have a stack of papers there. This is great. You're prepared.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Try to be.
I try to be. I'm notorious for having way too much paper.
It has been such a crazy week, hasn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah. Have you been to the Capitol at all this week?
I was there once because we had a subcommittee meeting on reforming the emergency public health disaster chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, on Wednesday we finally got to have
Wednesday.
that conversation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I was not there on Wednesday. Was it as crazy as Monday and Thursday?
No, it was in the afternoon, and it was not crazy in the afternoon anyway, which I didn't get there till then. But it was crazy in the aspect that it got moved about an hour and a half later just because committees were taking longer and whatnot.
Well, it seems like you're really making a lot of accomplishments this session. I mean, the bills are just kind of pouring through. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? What is it you're working on? We've got Funnel Week coming up. What are some of the bills that are so important?
Oh, well, I know we were chatting on our live we did last week and just kind of catching up that we have bills that are funnel proof, like 2 weeks, it felt like after session started, which was exciting because normally that week of funnel, you're like, okay, let's get everything done. And here not that we're relaxing by any means, but there's not every bill that we're having to call on and look into.
Yeah.
Lindsay has the bill tracker. I'm just going off my one sheet that I have here on some of them that we're
I would say
working on.
Probably our biggest one that we've been wanting, that was a holdover from last year that should have passed, was the exemption notification bill, right? Just to make sure people are informed about exemptions. And so we are waiting for that one to get through the Senate.
Okay.
So that one's not quite done yet. So we'll have some calls to action this weekend yet. But it is through the House, and so it is funnel proof on that regard.
So it's through the House, and so there's a companion bill, or did it come back through?
Yeah, it's the exact same bill in the Senate, so it would be through both sides.
And tell us about that bill. What is it? Why is it important?
Yeah, that one was kind of my baby last year. Being on school board, it was really important to me that parents are properly informed that medical and religious exemptions are allowed. And so a lot of schools will say no shots, no school, or they'll send a registration out that says you need to provide your vaccination status, but they don't say anything about your exemptions. And so we had to make a bill that just says schools need to disclose the current law. We're not changing any of the requirements for school, just saying that there needs to be informed consent. And so this one was one vote from the governor's desk twice.
Oh my goodness.
Last year. So
my goodness.
To have the two companion bills, it to be funnel proof, get through HHS on the Senate side, go to the floor is a good feeling for that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And what's the pushback on that? Because that makes perfect sense to me.
Well, the interesting thing was it was in education last year, and it passed the education full committee in the House with full bipartisan support. But in the HHS, it's been separate.
Yeah, it's been subdivided. It's
Party
been
lines.
partisan
Right.
again.
Yeah.
You know what I found odd about it was when I testified for it, you had messaged me and I came up, and I think it was last year, maybe. I know it. Yeah, I did this year too. But I thought it was just crazy that some of the pushback was, well, if we tell people what their options are, they're not going to get vaccinated. They're going to have hesitancy, or our rates are going to go down, or something like that. It's like, let's lie to them and keep them in the dark,
Right.
so that we can give them more shots.
Where's that in the definition of what public health is?
Right.
Let's just omit information.
Right.
Well, and with that exemption too, that doesn't mean that they aren't completely unvaccinated.
Right.
It could be that maybe they just don't want the MMR.
Right.
And that's the only one. Or I know Lindsay's made a point too. Maybe you just don't want the school knowing what you're doing with your children's health.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense too.
I mean, even if you do get all the immunizations for your children, maybe you don't want to submit the whole record to them, and so they know all your history. I don't know. Between that and Iris, I don't know if I would want my health records out there.
I had a friend who was pretty conservative, but he got the COVID shot. He was an older gentleman, and his work asked him what his status was, and he said, "I told him it was none of their business."
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, even though he got it, he said, "It's none of your business what my medical status is."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, is it the HPV, STD? What's that bill and
That's
where's
the
that
minor
at?
consent bill. So
Okay.
we discovered in the Iowa code for minor exceptions that there's a loophole where it says that minors can consent to preventatives for STDs. Well, preventative is a vaccine.
Right,
And
right.
so in Iowa code, technically speaking, and because of federal law, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, you have to give the vaccine information statement to the parent, except for these two vaccines that protect against sexually transmitted diseases, which is Hep B and HPV. And so for a long time, they were just operating, nobody really drew much attention to it other than the fact that we knew there were people being vaccinated with HPV without their parents' knowledge. They were being bullied in the exam room like your experience was.
And you'd think I'd be the least likely person they'd try to bully.
Yeah, I
Bald
know.
white male with a beard. But you get in the room with those nurses.
Yeah.
They make you feel like, hey, this is what you're going to do.
I know. It's not a conversation.
No,
it's
no.
very much a one-sided conversation. But when that DC bill, the city of DC, Washington, DC, tried to pass an ordinance, well, they did pass an ordinance that would allow minors to consent to the COVID vaccine, and it got taken to court. And so it was the DC versus Maher decision that they acknowledged, no, this is illegal because of the federal National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. And so that's what we've been using for our argument that, hey, these are on the childhood schedule. You cannot do this for a federal law, number one. Number two, every other vaccine, you have to get the vaccine information statement. So why are we just skipping this one?
I always love being in the subcommittee hearings with you. It's like the last one, Lindsay walks in, it's a big room, it's full, everybody's around, and she goes clear to the end, which was perfect because we hear all these, it's so funny, trust the science, safe and effective, rhetoric, no science, no data, false data, if any, and then you get to Lindsay and she has it all laid out. How do you do that, and what's your background? Why are you such an expert on this?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm an expert other than in just
She's our
experience. But my background, I guess, for education-wise was I went to school to be a virologist.
Okay.
And I was doing my doctorate at the University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine, studying the Ebola virus and how it actually interacts with the cell and infects the cell. We were studying the mechanism of cellular entry, I guess you could say. And it was during graduate school that I decided that this was not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. Number one. Number two, morally, ethically, I had some dilemmas with working with aborted fetal tissue, which we were. That's where we grew our virus, and where a majority of labs grow virus. And so I was about the same time I met my husband.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
I ended up deciding not to finish my doctorate, and I left with a master's degree. Okay. So I completed my master's thesis and went about my life, and then had kids. And it was when I was having kids, a friend of mine who had kids before me, she just said, look at the ingredients. And so I did. I looked at the ingredients, and I knew what they were because I used those when I was making virus in the lab.
Right.
And their chemical reagents, their cells, right? And they're listed as ingredients in our vaccines. So what does that tell you? They're not getting purified out. They're not getting taken out. So you're injecting formaldehyde, you're injecting Triton X, you're injecting human fetal epithelial cells, right? And so that was like, whoa, what are we doing? And then the schedule, that was another big mind-blowing because I grew up in the 80s, right? So we got 3 different types, 11 doses maybe. And now it's crazy. It's in the 80s because of the COVID vaccine.
Is it in the 80s now? Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
I've been misrepresenting. I tell people 72.
Well, that's what it was pre-COVID.
Long time.
Pre-COVID.
I think that's what you told me last time when it was 5 years ago.
It was. Yeah. So then, it was the Vax bus when Shanda started this whole thing. Polly Tommy came around with the Vax bus, and I was interviewed on there. And we started ICI. I would say Shanda and her husband, and I helped. I would help with research. I would help with Bill's stuff because I found that kind of interesting. And I think I was talking to some legislators the other day. We've been at this 8 years.
Yeah,
That's
2017.
And it's just
That's amazing.
it's just what you learn as you go, right? And there's been people before us who've helped out along the way, right? Sonia
Yeah.
and Dana and a lot of these moms who are the moms of vaccine injured children. And thanks be to God, my children are not vaccine injured. So I feel like God put me here to help because I don't have to. They are very busy with their children, and rightfully so. I have 4 children, but I mean, I don't have as their situation is.
Right.
And I always wondered why God put me in the position he did with going through microbiology and virology and then to just kind of leave that and go a different direction. But I just always knew he had a plan, and
That's amazing.
who knew it'd be here?
Right. Well, you're doing great work. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Gabby, how did you get involved with ICI?
Yeah, we well, my daughter was born in 2017, so I was just thinking about it today, actually listening to the High Wire on my way down. ICANN was founded in 2017, so it was definitely a God thing that my eyes would have never looked at any of this stuff until you have a child. And I remember my mom was kind of talking to me about it a little bit, and I was like, all my friends do. Like, I don't want to be one of those weird people that doesn't. And so we were in the hospital, and I was alone in the room, and they said, hey, you need to sign all these papers. Well, I'm about ready to give birth, and so I signed them, not really sure what I signed. And then I get home, and my mom gives me the Truth About Vaccine series. And here I am, a first-time mom with a baby on my lap, watching these videos of all of these children going through injuries. And I couldn't even make it through the whole series. And then I read Dr. Paul Thomas's book, and we did one DTaP because, there you go, the Vax movie.
This scared me.
Yeah.
That is scary.
And we did one DTaP, and I saw this look in her eyes like I've never seen before, and this cry I never heard. And I said, no, we're never doing any again. And we haven't. And there's not one part of me that regrets not doing more.
How old are your kids?
She's 8 now, or she'll be 8 next month. So
And super healthy?
she has never had an antibiotic. She's never had Tylenol. People at work ask me, like, what do you do when she gets an ear infection? She doesn't. She's never had one. We had to actually fill out a lead blood exemption. Those are a form you can also do because we stopped going to well baby checks after 4 months. And so they never did the blood prick on her. So we had to fill out one of those. That does still have to be notarized, unlike the religious exemption. Yeah. And you have to send a copy to the school and down to the public health building. But no, she is as healthy could be.
Yeah,
so.
That's amazing. Yeah, you meet parents of kids that have never been vaccinated, and you're like, oh man, they must be sick, right? Well, no, they've never been sick, or they're incredibly healthy.
Yeah.
And we have one of the most unhealthy countries in the world.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just I think that's the frustrating part about what we do at the State House sometimes is those subcommittees are so short and your statements have to be so concise that we really can't get into the debate like on the immune system, right? There's always this like, oh, there's this, what's going to happen when measles comes or what's going to happen with polio or all these, what's some new rare disease that's going to jump out of nowhere like Ebola did and start scaring people and killing people, right? But it's the other side of the story we don't talk about is our own immune system, is the 4 trillion pathogens, microbes, not pathogens, that live inside our body or on the outside of our body. That's our defense.
Right.
So it's not just we are only bombarded with pathogens. We actually have microbes that do the defense for us as well. And they outnumber them until an infection takes place. But that's the conversation we're not having. And that's what I always get frustrated with anyway.
Yeah, that's that conversation doesn't make billions of dollars for people either.
No.
Yeah. And you homeschool your kids, right?
We do.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I don't. She's in the public school system. I'm on the school board also.
Hey, that's good.
If I
She's
can't
doing her part.
homeschool her, I'm going to make sure
right.
I can be involved as much as I can. So.
And how is your school doing around all the stuff that we've been experiencing the last few years?
I do not live in the metro. I am an hour and a half north, so small community school. And it's kind of a different world. I remember the first time I came down to the Capitol and spoke as a school board member in favor of some of the bills, and just said, we don't want to play public health. It's not our role. And, I had a couple people come up and ask to, interview me for, I'm not sure what publication they were with, but you kind of forget when you're in a small town that when you come out of it, that a conservative outspoken school board member isn't a common thing. So
yeah.
But no, I really love our little small knit school. I know all the teachers, our classes are smaller. Everyone can walk to school because the town's only like a mile wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Winterset, and our kids went to Van Meter, and we really liked having a small town and knowing the teachers, and you go to all the conferences and everybody knows everybody. Well, you feel like everybody should know everybody, but then some of the other grades, you're like, who is that? I don't. It's the grades your kids are in. You pretty much know everybody, but
right.
Yeah, it's great. Lindsay, how much has changed for you in the movement? Having been in it 8 years, how you approach things, and do you feel like you've learned and grown, and you do things differently?
Yeah. I mean, the first year we went, we had a bill, or we didn't even have a bill. We just went to lobby, and we would take our binders with our information and pull legislators out and just start having conversations. But we didn't even have a bill to lobby on. So I think half the time they were like, why are you wasting my time, right? But we would just go and start talking to them about why we're passionate about the issue. And then the second year, Senator Guth did introduce the bill to introduce a conscientious exemption in Iowa, or philosophical exemption. And we had 185 people show up at that subcommittee.
What?
In the third floor. Yes. 185 people.
Now tell me, backtrack, what was it for?
Adding a philosophical exemption in addition to the religious and medical exemptions.
When was that?
I think it was 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was what caught the attention of Jacob Hall.
Right.
Was he's like, why are all these people here?
In the smallest room in the Capitol.
Right.
It was a small room. And so, not everybody could be in. So they just lined the halls and watched it on their phones and whatnot. But it was, we didn't have any idea. Like, we came with 4 pages of notes of like rebuttal, arguments and stuff. But then when we stood up, we would say one sentence and we'd sit down. Like, we thought this was like a debate type of thing, but you go around the room and talk. And so we've learned a lot since then. Yeah. And I think a lot of it's, trying not to word vomit and overwhelm the legislators with all of it, versus just making simple points of, this is why this bill needs to pass. Here's the evidence. And just, leaving it there. We don't have to get into the vaccine debate. We don't have to change their mind about not getting the flu shot, right? That's not what we're there for. We're there to maintain choice and improve the informed consent process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I had a drink with Shipley and his wife last night, and we were talking, and I think this is his 7th year, and he was talking about how much different it is, how he said, I used to think I had to control everything. And now he's gotten to the point where he understands things better, understands the flow better. And you can tell, too, he's more laid back, more seasoned. Yeah.
And it's just, we're just there to support. Thankfully, we're at the point where, it's not just Senator Guth who's supporting our bills and wanting to move them. Or Representative Shipley, because he was the co-sponsor that year in the House for that philosophical exemption. But now, other senators and legislators bring their own bills. And so then we're, on the job of, okay, let's roll with it. Let's educate on it. And let's help move this process along, because there's a big interest. And I think that's what we saw in the last election, the Maher movement. And it's been building and building and building for at least 9 years.
Is it Maher or Maha?
Maher. I don't know. How do you say it? Maha?
Well, we could do Miha.
Yeah.
Make Iowa healthy again.
There you go.
Is it easier this session? Do you feel like people are more open? Because when the few subcommittees I've made that you invited me to, it seems like people bring up the COVID. Because we all went through that. We all saw safe and effective 90% go down to 40%, go down to 0, and then all the issues from that vaccine. And I think a lot of the legislators are more educated now, or they have family that have had issues from the COVID shot, or they've seen behind. I think there's more openness to giving people more choice and making sure people are more informed. Is that what it seems like to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't been as involved for as long. I think I've done three years of lobby days, and I've just seen a change in just those 3 years. Even and from both sides of the party. I mean, we even have Democrats coming up and having engaging conversations with us, and not just telling us you're killing everyone, which is a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This year's lobby day was a little more interesting than normal.
Yeah. It's true.
It was on one of the nationwide protest days, so.
Yeah.
We had a whole new group of people to advocate to, and we kind of joked about it at first, like, oh, look at all these people we can talk to. And it actually ended up being a really great day, because we would have never had an opportunity to have conversations with people that oppose us as much as we did that day. And even though we had to ask them a million times, what did you just say? Because they were wearing masks. they can't refute what we have on the table because it's straight from the CDC. Well, where are the other studies? Well, no, these are the studies. Well, I like to research. I'm going to go look into this. You should, because there aren't any more out there.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so
Wow.
it was a really good day, and legislators come down and thank us for coming to the Capitol and talking on this issue. And we bring our big poster with us that lists all of the vaccine schedule from the 60s to the 80s to 2022, I think is what
Yeah, I
our
think
current
that's-
poster is. And you can't argue that visual.
Right.
So we also had the opportunity of some students were there that are going to become doctors. I won't say where they are going to school at, but they were telling us we were spreading medical misinformation, that
Yeah.
even though we were disclosing the proper information, the way that we were talking about it just had a negative undertone. And, we just kind of said, well, what's negative about it? Like, we're just giving you the information. You're the one that's saying it's bad.
Yeah. Or it's
Well,
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have other peer-reviewed studies and da 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 da. And I said, well, here's our email address. Can you send those to us? Because I would love to see a copy of them. Yes, I'll go talk to my professor right now. They would love to send you this information. We still haven't got the email.
You're still waiting on the email, huh?
Yeah,
Did
that
you check
was-
your junk folder?
That's a good question.
I don't
That was a
normally
week and a
check
half
that
ago,
one.
though.
Yeah.
Or almost 2 weeks ago now. But yeah.
But, I hope she did go back to her professor and say, hey, look
do
at what
too.
they're saying. Like, what other things do we have to be able to tell them they're wrong? And for the professor to have to say, nope, these are the only studies that are out there.
Yeah.
Like, it can just be something that simple to make someone go, I think I do want to look into this a little bit more.
Yes, definitely. I
Yeah,
mean, those
that was-
conversations are important.
That was specifically the ICANN PDF one pager. It's a really powerful one
Yeah.
that Aaron Siri, the lawyer, put together of all the studies that were used by the FDA to justify putting the vaccines on the childhood schedule. And he put all of those on a one-page document. He put whether or not they had a placebo as a control group, and he put how long they were monitored for. It's incredibly powerful because
Wow.
all of the ones listed there, the longest one they studied was 6 months.
Can you send me that graphic
Absolutely.
tonight? Because
Yeah.
maybe I can get it put in the
Yes.
video.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah. And then I think there was only one that had a placebo group. And
Two.
then two.
The COVID that they don't give anyone.
Oh, yeah.
And then dengue fever.
2 out of all
All of them.
of them?
Most of the time, they just leave the virus or bacterial or subunit, whatever they're using, out, and they give you all the other stuff that's in it. So whatever the adjuvants are your placebo group.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because then both people in the control or in the study will have effects, and then it balances it out. So then they can say, well, it's safe because both parties are having a reaction to it.
Or they'll compare it to an old vaccine. So
Interesting. Interesting.
Well, and then when you look at how long they were, I always pick on Hep B because it's at the top.
Yep.
5 days is all they monitored the children that they gave that vaccine to.
Really?
So if you had any reactions after 5 days, it didn't count.
Yep. They didn't record it.
That is insane.
And that's what we're giving to newborns on the first day of life.
Wow. And how do you get to you kind of hit on it when you're in your 20s and you're trying to do the right thing and you don't have a lot of life experience and you think, oh man, am I going to hurt my kids if we don't get these shots? Everybody else is doing it. It just seems like line up and get them. And then as you get older, you start to learn, okay, well, what did they learn about vaccines in medical school? Did they have 4 hours And everything they've learned now is from people selling the drug, big pharma, you know, beautiful women with donuts and coming in and schmoozing the doctors, right?
Right.
Well, I think that was my favorite conversation that I had at this year's lobby day, because we've also learned throughout the years that food is also a good way to get people to come talk to you.
For sure.
So we'll bring sandwiches
There
and
you
cookies
go.
now.
Beautiful women with food.
Yes.
And we had some pages come
Learning
down.
from the competition.
Yeah.
That's right.
And here's these 2 high school girls, and they're like, I don't think they had any clue what our booth was. They just saw cookies. So they came down, and I was talking to them about it. About 20 minutes later, she came down with 3 more of her friends and said, you need to listen to this.
That is awesome.
And so, you know, if they can share with others, and I think that's the thing that our organization has been talking about more, is how do we reach the people that have no clue that our organization exists? Because if you're not out there looking for it. And so this last weekend, we actually went to the Homestead Expo in Ottumwa and had a vendor booth there. And we had a great opportunity. I kind of had to switch my mind. I was used to being at the Capitol on the offensive. That we had like-minded people with us this last weekend. And so it was really great conversations. But we met so many people that don't vaccinate their kids, are very health-minded, that had no idea that our organization even existed.
Really? Well, they will now.
Yeah. And we've done the homeschool conference in the past and been a vendor there several years. And that's the same thing. Like, right, just getting into different niches. That
Is there a much higher percentage of homeschool parents that don't vaccinate their kids?
I don't know. You know, thankfully we don't keep a lot of data on homeschoolers in Iowa, which I would love to keep it that way.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you just have to take a poll at the event.
Yeah, right. Yes. But I do think that, you know, there probably are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that come to our conference are homeschool families. Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes older people that you talk to, they'll say, well, if it weren't for the polio vaccine, we'd all be dead, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
Now, what's the story there? Because I had read that the doctor who created the polio vaccine said that the second round of polio was from the vaccine. Is that true? Or I mean, we could speculate, but is that kind of?
I'm actually reading The Moth and the Iron Lung right now. It's in my backpack for my flight tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that I can get a little bit more well-versed on the polio one. I mean, if you go to learntherisk.org, they have a really great chart out there that shows polio and measles and all of the the infections and how many people were dying from them. And they were almost gone when the vaccine was introduced.
Yeah.
Really?
So when you say like, oh, well, the polio vaccine, you know, eradicated polio, it was almost gone by the time the vaccine came out. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that one.
Yeah. Plus one of the things I brought to the table for the legislators was, you know, the Cutter incident was a polio vaccine called the Cutter one that ended up killing 10 children. And so then they removed it from the market.
Wow.
And we don't talk about that enough, but the swine flu vaccine in 1976, they also had 53 people die after taking it, and they removed it from the market. Because there's a lot of calls right now to take the COVID vaccines off the market because of how many people have died, right? And so that's just, we've been trying to kind of focus that attention that there are vaccines in the past we have had to remove because they've been so dangerous. I think the other thing with polio that a lot of people don't think about is when we had polio, were there PCR tests? No. So they were diagnosing based on symptoms, right? Symptomology, okay? And a lot of the times after the vaccine was introduced, similar to how they did COVID, they changed the diagnostic criteria for what could be declared polio. So you ended up with a smaller subset of people getting polio, and they started calling other things myelitis or ADEM or Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Oh.
So they changed how they diagnose things, and then they had all these new diagnoses that they came up with. So there was a lot of different things at play. Despite if you go back to like the newspapers of those days and you read some of these historical books, polio is like, you know, a mass outbreak in certain areas, but it wasn't widespread across the United States. And so you have to ask why. Like, why was it only in, you know, an urban population in the Northeast? Or why was it so, like, not existent very much in the South? And there's a lot of other things that could have been at play.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about the Ebola
Yeah.
virus, and you were studying that.
Yeah.
You know, I interviewed Dr. Brian Artis, and he said that they pulled the remdesivir from the study they did on the Ebola virus because it was killing people, like highest death rate with remdesivir. And then they repurposed it for COVID.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I mean, that's just it. Like they're like going into the COVID, like when they were starting to do the vaccine, we sent information to the legislators like mRNA is not new. They've been studying this for 30 years. Here's what we know. Here's the adenoviral vectored vaccines. Here's what they do. Here's the risks and the possible side effects. Here's what the studies show, right? Because these things have been around and they just try to change them or, you know, they try to improve upon them, but there's still risks. And so make sure people know what those risks are. And they obviously didn't do that job of informing the public of what the risks were. But we knew that, like the mRNA trials in the animals were very bad. That's why they stopped.
Died.
All the ferrets died. That's right. And the adenoviral vectored vaccines, they have never been overly successful with, and they've had hundreds of people die with those overseas. So same with the remdesivir. I mean, if you read the real Anthony Fauci by RFK,
I've got it, but I just haven't gotten into it. It's really hard to read.
Well, if you listen to it, it's 25 hours long. So but it has a lot of info in there about the history of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's on my list.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that stack there. I've read all of those books on gender identity and the trans cult.
Yes.
But that's something that's concerned me so much that I felt like I needed to study it a little bit.
Sure.
So,
so.
Dr. Brian Artis called it "Run, Death is Near." And what were the side effects, or what are some of the side effects of remdesivir?
Kidney failure.
Yeah, that was
I think that was the biggest one.
Yeah. And I think we know someone whose husband passed away that they seem to correlate that with remdesivir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad.
It is. And then, just this week, they redacted the hydroxychloroquine study that they used to justify that it wasn't safe.
Yeah, that's
redacted
crazy.
it. Why? Oh, because it probably wasn't designed well. The study was a poor design, which we all knew. But
yeah, definitely. Insane. Well, what we have what are the bills that you're working on?
Yeah, one that we didn't do, I want to give a props to Representative Fisher for that one because it was something that we have.
Bradley.
And Bradley, we've had a lot of parents reaching out to us lately about their students going into the medical industry, and they get to the very end where they have to go do a clinical, and they're told they have to get vaccinated to do it. And so there was a civil rights violation filed, was it last year? Last year now. And that was for the flu vaccine, but the school says, no, you can do an exemption. The hospital they go to says they're an exemption, but then they say, well, if you want to get accepted into it, though, you'll have to get vaccinated or they won't pick you. So they're working on that right now. It's just the COVID-19 shot. We'd like to see that expanded to more.
And that's in the House HHS committee, so it just hasn't passed through the full committee yet.
But did it go through the Senate?
No. It wasn't introduced there at all.
Oh, I think I testified on that one.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It is. Some other ones that we've had that they need to go through full committee yet to stay alive, but they've had their subcommittee is the right of refusal. You were there for that one as well. It's the conscientious right to refuse an emergency use authorized product, because in the emergency use authorization code in the federal law, it states it must be voluntary. And so we're just wanting to codify that in state laws to make sure that everyone knows that that is supposed to be voluntary, no coercion, and especially since these products are experimental, the consent of the human subject has to exist.
Gosh, the woman that was sitting next to me had such a horror story and so many bad effects, ill effects from the COVID shot.
Yeah.
I mean, partially blind.
Yeah.
What other issues did she say she was having?
She has lesions on her brain, and she also has she's starting to go deaf in one of her ears.
Wow.
She had, I think, heart issues as well. Her name's Erica.
Then what killed me was someone with or I can't remember which department they were with, but it was a public health department, said, well, my son had myocarditis from the shot.
Yes.
I'm thankful he could get vaccinated.
I'm thankful that other people could get. I thought, well, you gave your son the shot. He got myocarditis. He was in the hospital. He had all these issues from it. Why are you grateful for that?
Yeah.
And if you're in public health, didn't you check the website? You know, it was like 0.002% of kids were supposedly affected by it. I mean, I checked the website like every 3 days during COVID, the iowa.coronavirus.gov.
Yeah.
I thought they did a decent job reporting some of the stuff, and and I just couldn't be alarmed by what I was seeing.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine why you would give your kid a COVID shot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway.
So we're pretty excited about that one. That was Senator Alonzo's bill, and it's going to go through Judiciary Committee this week. So we're pretty excited about that. Let's see. Emergency powers reform. I think I mentioned that one. That did go through subcommittee this week.
Okay.
So that's Senator Salmon's bill, and so that will go
what
through
does
committee.
that do?
So the public health disaster chapter is what it reforms, because currently how it reads, it says basically the governor or the director of Health and Human Services can order you to get tested, order citizens to get treated, vaccinate or order vaccinations for citizens if a public health disaster is declared. Now, this chapter was never utilized during the pandemic.
Right.
Thanks be to God.
Right.
But at the just same time, that language is just very concerning. And so a lot of it just leaves the chapter alone and just changes the words to recommend, because that's what public health should be. They should be educating and recommending things to the public, but not having the ability to order or, force people to do something. And so that's all that bill does, is it just changes that to be more reasonable, be more in line with our individual rights that are protected by the Constitution.
And that's Senator Salmon's bill?
Yeah, Senate File 406. So that should go through HHS full committee this week, along with that exemption notification bill.
Has it been through the House?
It was introduced with some additional parts of the emergency powers of the governor in it, and so that version hasn't gone anywhere in the House. So
right,
just
so
because
this will
of that.
have to go through the Senate and then through the House before the first funnel.
Well, no, it just has to go through the committee.
Through the committee, okay.
Yeah, first funnel is just the committee, and then the second funnel, it has to be through the floor and sub and committee of the second side.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, and that's great. And the thing we have to remember is we're not always going to have a governor that might not utilize that power.
Exactly. That was our whole point, is they're 10, 20 years down the road, another administration could be here where people don't remember what happened during COVID.
Right. And they could definitely mandate it.
Yeah.
And then we have one, we call it Say No to the WHO at Home. So this would just prevent the World Health Organization or the UN or the World Economic Forum from mandating anything to Iowa. So it just says we're a sovereign state. We aren't going to listen to what you're telling us because you don't have the authority over the state of Iowa.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
State
Do
sovereignty.
you have the bill number on that?
Oh, that one I
That's okay.
didn't
It's
when
on there.
I.
Oh, unless I wrote it down over here. I think it's HSB 233, and so that's actually in Ways and Means, and so it doesn't go through the funnel. It's exempt from the funnel
okay.
process. So
Great.
we haven't had the subcommittee on that yet, but
You said HF.
HSB. So it's
HSB.
it's a committee bill, 233. So we're looking forward to that conversation. It's a pretty simple bill, but just says, hey, international organizations, your stuff doesn't fly here.
That's great. I love
And even
it.
if, Trump does remove us from the WHO, it's still good to have that in Iowa law to make sure,
Yeah.
again, in the future, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's been some other bills that they've already moved through the process, so that we're pretty excited about that they've made it through. We have other bills that unfortunately haven't. They're probably not going to go anywhere this year. Health data privacy being one. We had a food labeling bill that unfortunately never came out of LSA, so that happens sometimes.
Interesting.
Yes, because there is that research going on to put human vaccines into produce and food. in order to invent new ways of vaccinating us. And
That's crazy.
it is. So,
Mad scientists
yeah.
doing their thing.
It is. And then this week we have one more subcommittee.
Yes.
Before the funnel. It's Senator Doug Campbell's bill that he brought. It is a prohibition of giving the mRNA or any other gene-based vaccines in the state of Iowa.
We've talked about that.
Yeah.
I've talked to him about it.
Yeah, so it was modeled after Montana, and there's, I think, 8 states now who've introduced it in some capacity, just to start this conversation, because unfortunately FDA has not pulled these products, despite the products having a 375,000%, they've exceeded the FDA Class 1 recall by 375,000%
What?
because of the number of deaths.
From
COVID vaccines.
how many people have died from it?
It was over 19,000 Americans that have been reported to VAERS. That's just VAERS.
And which is 1% of what
Right.
it could be.
Yeah.
If that.
It's very low. But like, and if you look at VAERS in and of itself, it says something around 36,000. But people can report to VAERS that aren't necessarily from America. So.
Is RFK Jr. doing a different kind of reporting system, or I thought I heard something
He had
like
talked
that.
about that. I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's a different kind or if he's just trying to enhance it. I think a lot of the things that he's talking about doing right now is just looking at the data they have, but actually digging into it and actually looking at what's happening, because they have all the information on a vax-unvax study. They just have never released any of it. And so he's just really wanting good, solid scientific information on the vaccine schedule, because that whole schedule has never been tested either. So every time they add one on to the vaccine schedule, they have no idea what happens when you add in Hep B and MMR and DTaP all at one time. You know, they know that there's huge levels of aluminum we're injecting into babies that far outweighs what we as a grown adults should be consuming in one day. And so that,
Yeah, that's insane. And he said, I thought he said something about the autism issue in the U.S. and the rates and how high it is, and
wanting to actually study
wanting to study it. Yeah. Oh,
1 in
go
22
figure.
in California.
1 in 22 kids is on the spectrum.
I say I think New Jersey was 1 in 28 just a few years ago, but yeah, it's like 1 in 33 or nationwide. But those states have.
Where are we at here?
I don't know.
I'm not sure what our number is.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find that
Yeah,
out.
definitely.
I've never looked at Iowa specifically, but yeah, that's just it. Like when you're looking at they say what doesn't cause autism, but they can't say what does. And I find that issue with cancer a lot too. Like, well, we're always looking for cures, but are we ever really looking at what's causing it? Like, why aren't we trying to prevent it? Well, prevention doesn't always pay the bills.
Yeah,
At Bayer
definitely
or Pfizer or Merck. But I mean, those are the things we should be doing, is looking at how can we prevent this from continuing to rise.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get into like pesticides and environmental issues at all, or do you mainly stay
Personally,
with medical?
but as an organization, we try
Yeah.
to focus on
Yeah.
more of the health freedom aspect of it.
Yeah. Parental rights, informed consent, and around the healthcare decisions mostly.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sub is on Monday though. So we're really excited because there are going to be quite a few experts coming to speak, or at least testifying via Zoom,
Really?
in regards to this bill, because the experts are the ones who put these meta reviews together in regards to the data, and so they're going to be testifying.
What's the bill number?
Senate File 360.
Senate File 360. When is this subcommittee?
It's Monday at 1:30 in the Senate Lounge, that big room again. Yep.
Do you have a lot of great people to testify?
We do. We've got a lot of people to testify. We've got some people who are coming that were injured or whose loved ones died.
I might have to listen to that one online. I don't know how much I could offer for testimony, but I would love to listen to it and see.
That's where we're encouraging. We're going to encourage anybody to listen in, or I mean, I'm going to try and tape this one. I think
Yeah, tape.
on my
What's
phone,
that?
videotape. So old school. Yes, record it on my phone maybe, or
Right,
I'm sure
right.
Jacob
Can you
will be
walk
there.
in with a video
I
camera on your
know,
shoulder?
right?
Right,
Don't
there you
have
go.
one of those anymore.
Big
but-
old
Cassette tape.
cassette tape.
Aging myself here.
So
Hit a new decade.
and the Senate, that's you have to log in, right? You have to click the link and log in. So you
Yeah.
couldn't stream it
On
or
Zoom.
They don't
Yeah.
stream it.
They don't stream it.
So you'd have to screen record it.
Yeah.
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 That would
but
be worth doing.
It would be.
Especially for this one, because like she said, we're having well-known experts that are going to be
Any
joining.
names I would know? Or
Oh yeah. Dr. Peter McCullough.
what?
Yep.
You're gonna have Dr. Peter McCullough.
Dr. Molly James.
Oh yeah,
I think she was
my
just
good
here.
friend. She's
Yes.
awesome.
Dr. Ben Tapper,
Yep.
one of the disinformation dozen.
Yep.
So
Holy cow, you guys are awesome.
Epidemiologist Nicholas Holscher, who's
Wow.
one of the main guys on X right now, leading this. Dr. Mary Bowden, Mary Talley Bowden from Texas. So,
So they're all zooming in. Okay,
yep.
that's the great thing about the Senate. You can at least zoom
Yes.
in. You can't do
Yes.
that in the House, right?
And I don't anticipate this bill going anywhere very far, but we want to start the conversation because these gene therapy products, like these are gene therapies. They are either RNA or DNA based. That's what in the definition of the bill. It's modified, it's self-amplifying RNA, it's messenger RNA, or it's DNA. These are new products to the marketplace that they're finding can shed, can transmit beyond the patient. And so that's the reason, like a lot of people are like, why are you trying to ban stuff? Why are you trying to ban products? That's not free market. Well, it isn't free market, but when I don't consent to the product and it's impacting me physically, then we have an issue. And that's what we're worried about.
I had a woman tell me that, and she was in her 60s, late 60s, and her brother had come and visited her, and he was exhibiting cold symptoms, but he had just gotten the COVID shot.
Oh.
And he'd cough and sneeze and wiping his nose and everything. And the next day, she said she said she bled like she was 16 years old.
Yeah.
She had menstrual, whatever.
that was a big side effect of shedding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is, and that's what they're documenting in these studies is all of these bleeding disorders.
Really.
Versus both in menstruation, but also miscarriages, various bleeding from other aspects of the body, not just women and their menstrual systems or menstrual cycles. So there is evidence, and then there's now evidence of DNA contamination in these from the bacterial plasmids. And when you have DNA, double-stranded DNA plasmid DNA in there being put into your body, number one, it's genotoxic, so it's going to raise red flags with the immune system. So that's why we're seeing a lot of really, really scary immune system or overactive immune system reactions. But in addition, you have an SV40 promoter in there, which is a oncogenic virus, meaning it can cause cancer. When you have that with double-stranded DNA, now you're really toeing the line of potentially integrating into your own DNA.
I'll understand that a little better when I watch it back.
Yeah.
2 times.
Dr. Joe Ladapo from Florida, the Surgeon General,
Right.
issued a statement, I think it was last month, saying that we have serious concerns about these products integrating into humans, into our DNA. And then what happens when you do that? You change yourself. You're changing your DNA. You're potentially disrupting genes that have a function for making a protein or that are going to now cause cancer. That's the serious issues we're facing with these products. And that's why we have to be careful.
That's a lot. It's scary.
You're like, I'm glad I don't hang out with you much.
Yeah. You really, I'm getting depressed right now.
Most of our conversations don't get this technical.
It's true. It's true.
Right. You know what, though? I'll listen to this like 5 times.
Yeah.
But by the time, and I'll understand that.
Well, and watch the Zoom Monday because I'm not the expert on this.
I will. I appreciate, and I'll put that out there too.
Yeah.
Because I think people will be dying to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing that you could round that much support up.
Well, Dr. Mary Bowden from Texas, she's been the one trying to get the FDA to pull this product. And RFK just got confirmed. And so obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but it might take a little while. And we're hopeful that maybe they will do it. But at the same time, at the state level, we need to have these conversations anyway, because if this is a product that's going to be put on the market and it's dangerous, we should have the right to, as a state, say, nope, we're not going to offer that here. We do that with opioids. We do that with fentanyl.
All sorts of things.
We do that with marijuana, right? Medicinal marijuana, we have regulations. So I don't see why there's any reason why we can't have a discussion whether or not these products are safe for Iowa.
Definitely not. I don't see that either.
Yeah.
What I saw one of your calls to action on our Facebook page Which one was that?
That was probably the one we're just
Is
talking
that the
about.
one? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I feel like we're doing one every other day.
Yeah,
Seems like
yeah,
for a while there.
We were really ambitious this year with our bills.
It's hard
Well,
to keep
and
up with.
like you said earlier too, there were some that we didn't even know were
yeah.
going to be drafted, which
Yeah.
is great. And I
Most
know,
of this back page is other legislators that just great bills that we're supporting.
but I think that's something, you know, when you asked about what do you learn when doing this, is legislation is slow, and you can't just go down there and think you're going to get a
Do it
bill
in a day.
and
Yes.
get it done. And
I was so frustrated when we first started. You're like, this is common sense. We need to get this done. And you see that it can take a couple years.
Yeah.
You know, first you got to educate them, then they got to get part way through the process. But
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And sometimes it is just needing new people. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of change at the state
There
house in
has.
regards to the legislators. And so it's great. I mean, COVID opened a lot of eyes, like you
Yes,
said.
it did.
And it educated a lot of people. And unfortunately, the experiences educate us the most.
So this is a call to action. I hope I can get this episode out before Monday. I was going to take my time with it. I interviewed Holt last Saturday,
Yeah.
and we got it turned around in the same day because it was so
Well,
urgent.
it's
Oh, yeah.
important.
Yeah, but I will definitely promote this a little more because that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this is SF 360.
Yeah.
Okay. Read the bill. I'll definitely do that. That's exciting.
It is. It's a good conversation starter, and it has stirred up a lot of people already.
I bet.
There's some legislators that call me and they're like, "What is this bill, and how do I answer questions on it?"
Yeah, yeah.
Or how do I talk about it? And I'm just like, all legislation is just the start of a conversation.
Well, you need to
I
do a
don't
little
love all of
3-minute
it.
clip like I did with Steve.
Yeah.
And
That's a good idea.
they're using that to say, okay, here's what it does and here's what it doesn't do, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah, there was somebody who thought we were banning all vaccines.
right,
And I was
right.
like, oh, no.
Those crazy ICI
Yeah.
anti-vaxxers.
I know, anti-vaxxers. I was like, oh, no. We're actually never called for a vaccine to be removed before. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not what we're about.
Well, I think informed consent is so important in every area of medicine,
Absolutely.
whether it's abortion, whether it's vaccines, whether it's any kind of surgery or any procedure. I herniated a disc in my neck years ago, and you know they wanted to give me a cortisone shot, and then I thought, no, I don't think I want to do that. My arm was in a sling. I had pain radiating. I was icing. I couldn't sleep. And they sent me to the surgeon. And of course, he wanted to remove it through the front of my neck and then put a little, rubber thing in. And I said, well, what's the range of motion going to be like? And he said, well, I've had it done. And he goes like this. I'm like, I'm going to seek some alternate.
I might try acupuncture
Right.
first.
I said, I like to practice Tai Chi and some things like that.
Yeah.
And I went and did spinal decompression therapy for 3 months. Within a year, I had all my feeling back, and now I'm fine.
Nice.
But I would be like this if I had listened to him.
Yep, that's right.
But it only cost $2,500 for the spinal decompression therapy. That guy would have probably made like 30, 40, 50 grand for the surgery.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it doesn't really pay to do anything alternative like that.
Yeah. In some cases, yeah. And then sometimes alternative therapy can be more expensive because insurance does not
That's
cover it.
true. The insurance did not cover it.
Yep.
But it was
Yeah.
worth it.
But yeah, you're right. Informed consent is absolutely necessary and I think lacking in almost every area of medicine.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've had conversations with legislators about too. And just how can we really improve that? Because informed consent really is a legal terminology more so than it is a medical terminology.
Right.
And that's where it gets complex.
Yeah, definitely.
And-
Go ahead.
I would say going back to that minor consent one, we've had parents testify that they told the doctors, we don't want it. They've had the parents leave the room and then convince the child. And like you were saying earlier, like they were trying to bully me into it. Could you imagine being a 10-year-old
Right.
sitting in that room alone with a doctor saying you have to do this
Yeah.
after your parents just told them no? Like that's
I heard a couple of
mind-blowing
those
to me.
testimonies and I could not believe it. They left the room and then, they gave me a shot, Mom. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way you explained it. You pulled out the package insert. They were all talking about how there was no side effects, safe and effective. All this ideology that other people talk about. And what I heard was ideology from like 5 or 6 public health people.
I call it marketing.
Marketing, there you go. And you're like, well, if you read the package insert, it says, what was it, 2.5% on the older Gardasil and then 2.3%?
3.3. Yeah.
3.3?
Yeah.
I misheard that.
Of new systemic autoimmune conditions. Like, okay, and we don't have a baseline number because you didn't use a placebo.
Yeah.
So,
3.3% of the
nuts.
people that get the shot.
yeah, have a new onset autoimmune condition. And that's one of the biggest ones with HPV shot is the autoimmunity issues that we've seen.
Have a new autoimmune issue.
Yeah. We're really hoping this Merck lawsuit that's going on right now for the HPV vaccine is really successful.
There's a Merck lawsuit.
Oh, yeah. They've been sued multiple times for the HPV vaccine.
Do they just like take so much money and they know they're going to get sued at some point and say, okay, this is going to be part of the balance sheet of, we're going to make X amount of $1 billion and we're going to spend X amount of $1 million on lawsuits?
I would imagine they'd have to have a budget item for that because they definitely don't have one for R&D. You know, they're not very much. Most of it goes to marketing. And then for vaccines, they're liability free for the most part. So the only reasons these are getting brought forward is because they finally have some evidence of fraud.
Do you think that'll change under the new administration?
It already has
the
a little
liability?
bit. Well, the liability part, I'm not sure, but on the marketing aspect of it, you know, obviously it's going to take a congressional act to ban pharmaceutical ads on TV. The U.S. and New Zealand are the only countries that allow those. But RFK has come out and said anything from the CDC needs to be more focused on informed consent. So you haven't seen as many flu commercials as you have in the past, where it's like, go get your shot, it's flu season. Yeah. So he can do some things with that right now. When it comes to repealing the Act of 1986, there's definitely been talk of it.
Yeah.
But again, it would have to take Congress to vote for it.
Yeah.
I've never had a flu shot in my whole life.
But the CEO of Pfizer was on a broadcast, and the person on mainstream media actually asked him, like, well, how do you get safe and effective products to remove your liability? And he essentially said, like, we can't make them safe. Like, he didn't come out straight and say that, but he was asked right on mainstream news.
Like, that's why we can't get rid of the liability shield. Yeah.
Well, and that was their reason for putting it on there in the first place. Was there's no guarantee. I mean, we can't make them safe.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
Which is why, how does safe and effective, how is that even the thing?
When Congress has said they can't make a safe vaccine.
And the U.S. Supreme Court has said theirs are unavoidably unsafe.
Right, right.
Golly.
So you guys have had RFK Jr., your conference. You have a yearly conference, right?
Yes.
Is it the 15th of November every time or sometime in November?
It's November 22nd this year.
November 22nd.
Yeah.
Who's on your list? Do you know?
Yes, but we haven't announced it
you
yet.
haven't announced. Well, when is now a good time?
I don't even know this yet. So,
yeah, and we are looking at switching things up a little bit this year too. We are moving to the FFA Enrichment Center in Ankeny this year, but we're also looking at doing some breakout sessions. That was some of the feedback that we've had is, there's not enough time to visit the vendors. And also, we have just a wide variety of people coming now. There's people that have been to every conference since the very first one. There's some people that kind of got woke up during COVID. There's some now that are just going there. We have people that have children that don't have any vaccines, or some that have children that were severely injured. And so we're trying to find a way to bring value to all the different varieties. So we're looking at some breakout sessions that we can do. Maybe we bring in a holistic dentist that we can talk about. Maybe we bring in someone that does acupuncture again. That was a very well-received topic last year. What was the other one? A home birth, and just really giving you some tangible things that you can take from the conference and not just get an overload of science.
Yeah.
It's November 22nd.
Yeah.
You're going to give me a special ticket?
We can run a promotion. We can give you a promo code to run on the podcast.
There you go. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Send it to me.
Yeah. But RFK was our first year.
He is so amazing.
That was so incredible. Yeah. It was so great to get to have dinner with him. And
you've had the high wire guy on.
Dell's been there a couple times.
Dell, big tree. Yep. That's right.
I think he's 3 times.
Is it
3 times?
Yeah.
Maybe it's 2.
You're right.
2 or 3. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You girls are famous. You're in there now. What are your roles in ICI? Your separate roles?
I'm just a volunteer.
You're just a volunteer.
I used to be a vice president a long time
Right,
ago,
right.
board member, but I'm a
She
volunteer.
handles all of the legislation, though. I mean, our text chats about bills dropping and ideas and things. I feel like this year we're really prepared and have had a good layup for getting a lot of the call to actions out there.
Prepared
You guys
beforehand.
have such. Who does your Canvas stuff? Your graphics? You are so good at it.
Yeah.
I just,
I do
reuse them
I use
over and over
Canva
again.
too.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because it's kind of branding and people know what's coming. But
Yeah.
yeah, great
I
job.
can't take full credit.
Yeah,
I think
great
they were
job.
out there already. I just updated
Well,
the
you
covers.
know,
Yeah.
you did
I didn't
great
do
stuff,
any of
or
them.
whoever did back in the day. I
Yeah.
think I still have one of your little cards for an event called Stand.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
this is so cool. I need to keep this just in case I want to do something like that.
Yeah. That was some of our former board members. Yeah.
I've got
we had
that.
people.
I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a conference theme the one
Right.
year.
I
Yep.
thought this is great. They did a really nice job with this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've
That's
had,
what happens when you get a bunch of artistic women together.
Yeah. We have had some men as board members.
Okay.
A
So I
couple.
was going to ask you
A couple
that.
dads.
Yeah.
We have a man right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yep.
How many are on your board?
There are, I think 6 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7.
Yeah. I think you have
I
seven.
think it's 7 right
Yeah.
now.
Okay. And you have a man on there. That's great.
We do. Yep.
Why is it, do you think, that it's mostly women that are involved in this movement and education and everything?
The Maha moms.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when you grow the child and you see the child get injured, there's just that maternal instinct that just goes into mama bear mode.
Right. Right.
That you're not going to do that to my child. And we've seen a lot more dads coming to our conference
Oh,
over
yeah.
the years too. It's
The
almost evened
couples
out, I
come
would
together.
say.
Yep.
Has it really?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Okay. I was waiting till it was going to even out before I came.
No, I'd say it's getting a lot closer
Yeah,
now.
and we have legislators come, and yeah, it's just great. But I agree with that. I think that, and who is the people going to the doctor's appointments with the kids?
Right,
It's usually the moms.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but a lot of the times it is. And so I think a lot of the times it is the moms that are waking up first, or the ones who are the most protective. And a lot of people always ask me that question too, like, well, where are the dads at? And I'm like, well, my husband's great, and he has many wonderful qualities, but he doesn't have a virology degree in our house.
No. He's out slaying dragons, right?
He is. He is 100% the guy who's debating me across the kitchen table and asking me questions and making sure that we are solid on our logic and solid on our arguments, because they want to be involved too. They are involved. They're 100% involved in this process, whether it's support or whether it's working to keep the family going, So,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, what is the best place for people to reach you?
Yeah, we have Facebook and Instagram. Definitely a larger following on Facebook, and it seems easier to post on Facebook too, and that's where we'll do our lives.
Yeah.
We do legislative updates there, but I would say the best would go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, so informedchoiceiowa.com,
Okay.
and then it will prompt you to sign up for the newsletter.
And we don't
I'll put that
spam
in the-
people. Like, we're not
Yeah.
like Mercola where you get one a day.
No, we're not trying to
Yeah.
sell anything.
People sign up for my email list and they're like, when are you going to send me an email? Well, when I have something important to say,
Yeah.
it's not every day.
We try to do once a week for a legislative update, and then it will
Yes.
go kind of quiet, and then we'll get busier in the fall to promote our conference.
I
Yeah.
wonder if I'm on your
And
list. I don't
periodically
check
in
my
the
email.
summer, but
Yeah.
like especially if there's announcements. But yeah, during session, it's once a week for sure to keep
Okay.
people informed, because not everybody's on social media, which I applaud. Thank God for them.
I wish I didn't have to be.
I know.
It's such a, I don't know,
It's a lot
burden.
of overload.
Yeah.
What keeps you going? What drives you to continue in this after 8 years?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of it for me is justice. I want to, justice and a good example for my kids. I want them to know that, not just be so self-focused on success or, their family or whatnot, but that we also are a community. Like, there's an aspect of being an American that you should be involved civically in some
Right.
degree. And I think we missed that for a while there. And just my beliefs anyway, but I would love to instill that into my kids and, our the families that we interact with that just, yes, it's good to be, successful. And yes, you need to focus on your family. Absolutely. Number one or number two behind the Lord. But then you really do need to make sure you're doing your part to make your community a good place. Because if we have that mentality where we are checking in with the library board or checking in with what's going on in our city or our schools, this stuff wouldn't have gotten so out of hand.
Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps me going, is just wanting to see progress so we can correct, because otherwise this country is not going to be there for our children and in the capacity that any of us had growing up.
Yeah.
And so I truly believe it's like now or never.
Yes. Yes.
Not to be doom and gloom again, but
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. We all have a duty to take advantage or to take part in it.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Well, and just making it a better future for the next generation.
Yeah.
You look back on all of the medical advances that we have had, and there have been a lot of great ones, but when you look at our food system and what they spray in the skies and what we inject in our bodies and even just the lotions, there's a lot to change. And so if there's one thing that we can kind of focus on and work on that, it's easy for me to go down all sorts of rabbit holes when it comes to it, but just knowing that you're making a change and helping others live a better life.
Well, God bless you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You guys are awesome. Or you ladies are awesome. I really appreciate it. And I always just, and when you say justice, that's the feeling I have. It's like, and I wonder if we asked other people that are doing this, whether it's family leader or, it might be different, but at least the people that are, really going and donating their time and their efforts to try to make these changes, I bet that would be pretty high on the list for each of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, it has to be outside of ourselves. I mean,
for sure.
We're all just focused. I mean, we're focused here, especially here in Iowa. Like that is number one. I know a lot of people focus on the federal politics, but we have to stay focused at home.
We have to, because this is where we live.
Yep.
It's our school boards, it's our city councils, it's our county supervisors, it's our state representatives and the laws that we make. I think sometimes people get so focused on the national thing that they forget that it's local that we really have to make the changes.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have as much, you got to work in your circle of influence. And I sometimes feel like when people get caught up in the national issues, it's almost like entertainment. It's like, okay, I want to complain about it and post about it and talk about it, but I'm really not doing anything.
That's right.
So God bless you both for doing so much for us.
Thank you. Well, thank you for bringing all the issues to the forefront.
Yeah.
So
we'll just keep doing it.
It takes a team. There's a lot more behind us that we work beside to get it all done, for sure.
I was pretty special.
You just let me know when you need me. I'll come hang out. And I don't mind speaking at subcommittee hearing meetings.
Perfect.
All right. Well, let's check in another month and see how things are going.
Yeah.
All right.
Sound
Very
good? All right. We'll see you. Take care.